Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a system that is just mind-bogglingly huge. I mean, it's responsible for educating more children than the entire population of the United States. That's right, we're diving into India's education system. We're going to explore its deep philosophical roots, its absolutely colossal modern structure, and of course, the huge challenges that come with trying to operate on that kind of massive scale.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of any system, it's probably a good idea to step back and ask a really big question, one that shapes everything else. What is education really for? Is it just about getting a job, piling up facts, or is it something deeper?
Well, here's one powerful way to think about it. The idea that education is the single most important thing humanity has ever come up with. It's the very thing that kind of elevates us. It's not a luxury, not an extra. It's the absolute foundation of civilization, as essential to a society as food and water are to us as individuals.
And the word education itself actually gives us a hint. It comes from Latin, and it means to lead out. Now, isn't that a cool way to look at it? The idea isn't to just pour information into a child's head like it's an empty bucket. No, it's about drawing out the potential that's already there. And if you think of it that way, education becomes this lifelong journey where every single thing we experience, from birth right up until the very end, is part of our learning.
This philosophy, well, it has really deep roots in India. You can see it in the ancient Gurukula system. This is where a student would literally go live with their guru, their teacher. And they weren't just learning subjects, they were learning a whole way of life, all connected to nature and practical skills. It's such a stark contrast to the standardized classrooms we think of today, and it really makes you wonder, what might have been lost along the way.
So this lifelong journey of drawing potential out, how does it actually work in the real world? Well, modern thinking basically breaks all the learning we do down into three main paths, and together these three paths shape pretty much everything we know and can do.
Okay, this table breaks it down perfectly. Over on the left, you've got formal education. That's the one we all know. Schools, colleges, degrees, the whole structured system. In the middle, you have informal learning. This is all the stuff we just absorb from our family, our community, from just living life. And then on the right, there's non-formal education, which is this really cool flexible bridge between the two, offering things like specific job training for people outside that traditional school system.
Right, so now we're going to zoom in and focus on that first column, formal education. Because this is where we see the creation of something truly enormous, a massive state-run machine designed to educate literally hundreds of millions of people.
And at the very core of this whole system is a constitutional promise. Education in India isn't just an opportunity, it's a fundamental right. For every single child between 6 and 14, school is supposed to be free, and you have to go.
And this lays out that entire journey perfectly. A student kicks things off in preschool, moves into those compulsory elementary years, and then goes on to secondary school. But that big turning point, the real fork in the road, comes after grade 10. That's when they enter higher secondary and start to specialize, getting ready for whatever's next, college, job training, or heading straight into the workforce.
Okay, but let's be real. Promising education to over 1 billion people and actually pulling it off, well, those are two very different things. When you try to run a system on this kind of scale, you're going to run into some of the biggest challenges imaginable.
This really gets to the heart of the problem. You've got this immense push to give everyone access to education, to get every kid in a classroom. But that's in constant tension with the goal of making sure that education is actually a quality education. It's the big paradox. How do you serve everyone without letting the standards slip?
So the first huge challenge is the curriculum itself. What kids are being taught and how they're being taught it. A lot of critics say the system is all about memorizing theory for exams instead of learning practical, real-world skills. And with a bunch of different education boards and curriculums that can be pretty outdated, you end up with this big gap between what you learn in school and what employers are actually looking for.
Next up is the challenge of access and fairness. I mean, even though education is supposed to be compulsory, there are still major social and financial hurdles. The high cost of good schools, cultural pressures that might keep girls at home, and just high dropout rates. It all means that the promise of education for all isn't quite a reality for everyone just yet.
And finally, you've got the foundation of the whole thing, infrastructure and money. There's just not enough funding, which means a lot of schools are missing basic things like clean drinking water or even separate toilets for girls. That financial squeeze directly impacts the classroom, with teachers who are often underpaid and sometimes underqualified. And that, of course, is a direct hit to the quality of the learning.
And if you want to see just how big that infrastructure gap is, look at this number. A 2010 survey found that a staggering 95.2% of schools failed to meet the standards set by the government's own Right to Education Act. Let that sink in for a second. That's basically 19 out of every 20 schools falling short on the fundamentals.
So in the end, the mission is really about building a bridge. It's about closing this massive gap between a system built for sheer numbers, for mass access, and that universal goal of giving every kid a quality education. It's a challenge of both scale and substance that, frankly, very few countries in history have ever had to face.
And that leaves us with this final massive question. Can the biggest school system on the planet actually evolve? Can it deliver not just access, but excellence? The answer is going to decide the future of a nation, for sure. But it's also going to shape the future of learning for a huge chunk of all of humanity.